All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to CompuVision's live training, our 30-minute sessions where we get to talk about everything technology. Today, we're going to be talking about technology uses specifically for marketing teams. And I get the honor and privilege to facilitate a panel today with three very special guests. And I am not going to do any justice by introing them today. So I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about kind of what they do and their specialties throughout the marketing, digital marketing and content spaces. So first, welcome our guests. Yay. And we'll start off with Karen, if you want to introduce yourselves, and let's kick things off and just let me know who you are and the work that you get to do.
Sure thing. So my name is Karen Unland. I'm the co-founder of Taproot Publishing, whose flagship product is Taproot Edmonton. What we do is we inform communities about themselves. So some of the way that we do that is through original journalism, like stories about stuff that's happening in our community. Some of the ways we do that is kind of newer ways, such as podcasts or email newsletters that round up what's going on in Edmonton on tech, business, music, arts, media, 9 different topics that we send these roundup newsletters out about. And then we also have a briefings product that helps businesses and organizations pay attention to what's going on in their own community and share that with their staff or their stakeholders or their prospects or who their members, if they're a membership-based organization, that kind of thing. So we should just pay attention and share what's happening in the world. I would say probably compared to my fellow panelists that I'm coming from a very different place. Taproot's not really a marketing company, but where you're going to hear today is how Taproot can intersect with some of the kinds of marketing that you do. So there's some kinds of marketing that are kind of more transactional. There are products that say, this is on sale, or we have this service that might solve your problem, or that kind of thing. What we do is more relationship building. So we convey, I'm paying attention to you, I see what's happening, here's some useful information that might help you do your job better. And that's what Taproot does.
Great. Andrew, can I get you to go next?
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Andrew. I am the Director of Sales and Marketing and Lead Strategist at Search Engine People. We're a digital marketing agency that really specializes in SEO and pay-per-click. We've been around since 2001, which is essentially the beginning of time in the digital marketing space. And we get to work with a number of great brands, everything from mom and pop shops that are just getting started up and trying to get running, right up to some pretty significant brands like the Panasonics and Remaxes and PricewaterhouseCoopers of the world. So we really get to see many different types of businesses at a local, regional, national, and global level, and help them to either rank better or drive more leads to their websites.
Great. And last but certainly not least, Sam, can I get you to tell us who you are and what it is that you do?
My name is Sam Crockett. I am the Director of Web Development at Second Mile Marketing. We focus on inbound marketing and custom websites. So the website part is me. I get to spend my days learning about companies, small and large, anything from a law office to a university, and build websites for them.
And I just have to say that I'm really proud of where everybody is coming from on this panel today. I've got my local expert at Karen, so from Edmonton, of course. Andrew's joining us all the way from Toronto, and Sam is somebody that I get to work with on Upwork, which is a global freelance site, and he's actually out of Knoxville. So definitely a lot of different perspectives and different things going to be happening today from what feels like all over North America. So that's exciting. So let's jump into our first kind of big question, and I think I'll let somebody jump on it. I'm not going to steer this in any way. I'd love this to be a conversation. So tell me how things have changed in your opinion from a marketing perspective pre-COVID to where we find ourselves today.
Yeah, I don't mind jumping in here first. So, pre-COVID, a lot of businesses had really figured out what was working. Everything was going smooth, and I hesitate to say resting on your laurels as a marketing person, but everyone was hitting their lead targets, and it was fine as is. Once COVID happened, it changed businesses in a lot of ways. So a lot of them had to pivot and adapt. Some of them had a smaller customer base, some had a larger customer base, and that's really forced marketers to do the things that maybe they should have been doing all along but had been avoiding, either because it was scary to make a change when things were going well, or they simply didn't have the time. And now suddenly they either have to make the change, or they're not going to be able to continue as a business, or they find themselves having the time because their business has slowed down a little bit. And that's really led to an influx of companies, our clients and our business itself, to go in and start trying things that otherwise maybe would not have showed up on the marketing radar or the marketing mix. And now we're doing those things. So it's kind of a great change in that sense. As much as it's an unwanted push, it's a push that many, in fact, needed.
When you say the little things, just to follow up on that, what are you meaning? Do you have any specifics in terms of the little things?
Yeah, I'll give you a great example, one that kind of relates to what Sam and his team do. So, people tend to launch a website and then they'll wait 5 years and they'll do it again. Our agency, we specialize in web design. It's not what we do, but we launched a new website 9 months ago, and it was a significant improvement from what we had before. But there were still a number of things we wanted to change. We're now going ahead and making those changes. So there are things that didn't need to happen necessarily, but now they are happening. The other component would be looking at how, even we track our leads, right? So before we would focus on campaigns that were driving the greatest lead volume. That may not be the best practice in all cases. So now we're focusing on campaigns that drive particular types of leads, given industries that maybe perform a little bit better during this time. Those are things we didn't have to do before, and now we do. So you'll see more businesses, hopefully a lot of you on the call, taking things that were working fine, like your website, and using this opportunity to go ahead and fix it, even though it may not be that standard time frame. It may not be that 5-year mark or that 3-year mark when it's time to redo it. You're going to jump on it now when the opportunity exists and progress things forward.
Yeah, that's excellent, Andrew. To build on that, I would say there's no more set it and forget it approaches. It needs to be a constant iterative process of thinking about your customer and client base and how they're affected by current events, both COVID and politically around the world right now, and tweak that messaging and thereby tweak what's on your website constantly, so you can evolve as they're evolving and as their attention is rapidly shifting from Instagram to Facebook to Netflix to other websites. So you need to make sure you're fast and easy to navigate.
I think that's an interesting point, in that we're in a moment where unusually all of us are kind of in the same boat, right? Like there's lots of times when you're trying to talk to customers and you don't really know what's going on in their world, because everybody's different. Everybody lives in a different place and in a different place. And we're not all experiencing this moment the same, but it's a lot more similar now than it usually is. And so, yeah, it's important to be responsive. And just because you set some kind of plan, quarterly plan or goals, or something that you were going to concentrate on doing or saying this year, like that's all out the window, and we know that our customers are in that same position.
Locally, Karen, just to follow up on that, are you seeing anything in terms of the changes with Taproot and how you're reporting, how content is changing, any of those things, to kind of follow up and dive a little deeper on that thought?
I think my just general observations of like what's going on in the city is that there's kind of two kinds of people, and by extension, two kinds of businesses. So there's those for whom this pandemic shut everything down and gave them a lot more extra time, some of which they can spend on that kind of optimizing that Andrew's talking about, some of which they're just spending like surviving. And then there's a bunch of people who got like super extra double busy because of what was going on, and because they had children and dogs at home to deal with while they were trying to do all this other kind of work. And so the attention that you can get for anything that you're doing is shifted, and you have to be aware of that kind of thing. I also noticed that as far as like marketing spend goes, especially in the less digital kind of spending, but even so, I think is a lot of businesses right now have a bit of an aversion to being too selly because it doesn't play, and sometimes they're right, and sometimes they may be a little bit too conservative on that. But you have to read the room when you're trying to sell something, for sure. And then I also think that from a marketing point of view, we might conclude that, well, everybody's revenue's dried up, nobody has any money to spend, we shouldn't even try to go get it. But some businesses are doing better in this climate than before, or they have like a line item in their budget for marketing, and they used to spend it, say, sponsoring events. Well, there are no events to sponsor. So there's an opportunity there to see, well, okay, there's a goal that you were trying to achieve by sponsoring this live event that's not happening. How can we help you achieve that goal otherwise?
Yeah, we've seen the same thing with trade shows. If you get 70% of your business from trade shows, which a lot of businesses and a lot of industries do, home care would be a good example. There's always the Edmonton home show, the Toronto home show, and a lot of these landscapers and deck builders, they rely on that form of marketing to get their business. That doesn't exist right now, right? So now there needs to be a way to generate leads, but those industries are thriving. There's people that want to do upgrades to their home, and now it's led to this huge shift of where the heck do we go to find our customers now? Because we've always done it this way, and that channel just simply no longer exists.
I think that's a great follow-up into the next question. I swear I'll pay you later for that great segue. So moving forward for companies, what do you think is imperative for marketing teams, specifically in the digital space?
I think it's connecting with your users and your customers in a new manner. Jumping on the example of landscaping and companies that usually go to trade shows, they have that person-to-person interaction. Video, I'm seeing become very important. So not just having a webinar like this, but having a one-to-one video message instead of just sending an email. Send a message to one of your leads or one of your customers, and have those on their website or on your website so they can easily see a video from you and then maybe take an action to schedule a meeting or a follow-up. So I think being personal is critical right now.
Andrew, Karen?
Yeah, I think for me, conversion rate optimization is a big one right now. Karen kind of hit on the fact that there's a lot of businesses that are slow, but there's a lot that are busier than ever. And that leads to these two pools. So one pool where there's less demand for their product, and they need to do a better job of converting the very small amount of demand. So get more people to, once they get to your website, to actually go ahead and take an action. And then the opposite of that is these categories, or are these categories where there's a ton of volume now. There's a lot of competition, which tends to drive up your ad costs. If you're doing things like paid advertising, your cost per clicks become incrementally higher and more challenging. You need to get more value out of those clicks. So making the improvements to your website so that people will actually pick up the phone or fill out a form and contact you is going to be imperative at this point, whether you're on the slow side or the incredibly busy side.
Yeah, I think what I would add, because I would, being me, is it's don't put all of your energy necessarily into that super optimizable, measurable kind of stuff. Like, obviously, you can't afford to skimp on that, and it's effective, and you can watch how it's doing. But this is also a moment where you still have opportunities for earned media. You still have opportunities to get publicity for free for things that you're doing, as long as the things that you're doing are newsworthy and respond to a need in the market. And you also have lots of opportunities around owned media. So lots of people are taking this opportunity, I think, to beef up the resources and the teaching that they have available through their businesses. This would be an example right now of CompuVision's, ongoing. It's a huge part of CompuVision's marketing, Kara, is being like serving the community with information. And it's if you are in a position where you do have some time, this would be the time to do it. And podcasting, again, that like lots of businesses are jumping into this space right now to see if a podcast is a way to serve their customers, pay attention to their stakeholders, or just to share what they know in a way that builds that relationship that eventually makes a sale.
I think that's great, Karen. I love that you talked about podcasts. It's something that, in this time of video and content and blogs and writing, it's just, that voicification aspect is something I think we forget, especially as marketing teams, because, to produce them and to build them feels like an unknown skill. And so having the resources like Alberta Podcast Network or other, depending on where you live, like that, there are tons. And the most media that we're receiving right now is actually podcast interviews. Like we are getting asked to come on as a thought leader to do podcasts. And I think that is a great content strategy that gets overlooked a lot. Yeah. Okay, moving into my next question. Sorry, I had to chime in on that one. You can't tell the marketing director not to have an opinion. So what are some tools or technologies that you personally couldn't live without? Like, what is it that makes you do your day-to-day job really effective? Let's start with you, Sam.
So a few on just the communication side, since so many of us are working remotely right now. Slack and some type of project management software. We use Basecamp and then Asana with some other clients are critical to all of our activities. Specifically on the marketing side and on your website, things like Google Optimize that allow you to A/B test different messaging to different audiences is really important right now. And then if you just need a quick tool to audit your website to see where you stand, something like Google Lighthouse to allow you to see where you are on speed, on your images being optimized, on your SEO is very critical to my day-to-day.
For us, I was thinking like, what can I tell you that's not obvious? So I'm going to talk about two tools. One is called Tadum, which is software that helps you do keep meeting agendas and minutes. So it's all in one place. And Mac and I, to build Taproot, we have to share a brain. And we don't want to talk to each other all the time through Teams. We talk to each other a fair amount through Teams, but we don't want to, every time I think of something that we should bring up in the next meeting, I don't want to bug him. So I put it on our agenda in Tadum, and it's there. And then when we have our meeting, we take the minutes, and then they come out immediately. So it's developed by a local company called Code and Effect. I love it. I would not be able to live without it.
Is that Ashley's company?
Yeah. Yeah. Ashley
yeah.
It's just, it has both through Taproot, and then I also use it on the podcast network side of things just to keep things straight and keep everybody on track. And it's great. And then the other thing that I would suggest to people if they are thinking of getting into podcasting is if you're going to have a podcast, you need a podcast hosting platform for your audio files to live. And the one that I think is really well set up for business is called Transistor. So if you go to transistor.fm, this is Justin Jackson and John Buda's company. They're based in Vernon, BC and Chicago. I love Transistor just for ease of use. They are set up really well for businesses. And if you want to do a podcast that is not public actually, but just within your company, they also have private podcasting available. Or if you want it to make it available to a certain audience, it's there as well. So Tadum and Transistor, that's what I say.
Yeah, for me, my tool of use, aside from the operational ones that I know, Sam and Karen hit on a little bit here, would be HubSpot. And the reason why I bring that out is not because of the nurturing capabilities, which are great, but more so for the tracking and revenue allocation abilities. So what we're able to do is connect it with a tool like Google Ads or LinkedIn Ads, and to be able to determine which leads are actually driving revenue for the business. And we do this for ourselves, and we also do it for a handful of our clients. And that's really important right now because it's often changed. I know, speaking for myself personally and our agency with our own lead gen efforts, a lot of the campaigns that performed incredibly well pre-COVID are still performing well, but are now being surpassed by the ones that were maybe borderline, the ones that we were considering rebuilding or shutting down. Having those insights has allowed us to flip our budgets. So some campaigns that ran with an open budget now have strict limits, and other campaigns that had strict limits have now had the floodgates open. And knowing which campaigns are actually driving revenue and not just leads is hugely valuable when you're dealing with a challenging market or a limited budget all of a sudden, if there's concerns around marketing spend or any number of factors that are holding you back. Having those insights is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I need to chime in on that. So SEPeople is our provider, our SEO provider and SEM provider. And one of the really neat things that you guys have recently developed for us is, yes, we had Google Analytics. We've had all this data, but we didn't have Google Alerts. And that just like took it all up to a whole nother level. It was something I didn't even think about, but I'm not going to go in there every day and click around and look at all the reports every single day. It's just not a capability of mine. And so to have it alerting me on things that are really prevalent to what my ROI is for a business, I thought that was hands down one of the best tools that you guys have given me in my post-COVID world recently. So to jump on that, yes, HubSpot, but the way that HubSpot and Google kind of can connect is absolutely amazing. So the next is, and I'm going to start with Karen on this one because I have to hear her answer. When I wrote this, I wrote it hoping that she would answer this question for me. We have all heard that content is king, but in this noisy, chaotic, politically charged landscape, is there a new golden rule?
I think so. Maybe I just made one up. But what I think is that content without purpose just adds to the noise. So I think that axiom, content is king, has maybe been misunderstood by some people. That's like, okay, we gotta make a lot of content. We gotta put out a bunch of stuff. We gotta keep our, it's good for our SEO if we have a blog post every week that says 3 tips for blank and 5 hacks for that, right? And we've all seen all of that. It's garbage and it doesn't help people and it's not what anybody's looking for. And it's written just sort of to, I think, and the experts can tell me if I'm wrong, but it feels like it's written just to trick Google into thinking that you are relevant when you're not necessarily. And it's not even the level of spam of the black hat link builder types. It's just junk, right? What we need to do is figure out like what solves a problem for my people. How do I write something that's going to help somebody do their job better? How do I use the little bit of a spotlight that I have to shine it on other people so that they can so that they think warm thoughts about me and actually get a little bit extra rattle from this. And so that's what I mean when I say content without purpose just adds to the noise.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. There used to be a time where we could just write a page. It could be 200 words and you would rank for it. And the reality is that's not what happens today. You need to write for the people that are going to read the content first. And Google's doing their best to figure out what quality content looks like. And the most recent example I can give of that is content length or content depth. There used to be a time where a 400-word blog post would rank quite easily if you had enough authority. Now we're writing for clients 1,500 and 2,000-word blog posts. We have one coming up on our site. It's either Friday this week or Friday next week that one of my colleagues wrote that is a 3,700-word blog post. And it's very in-depth review of how radio and digital can both work together. But that's something we would not have done in the past. So I think content still is king, but I agree with Karen. It has to be quality content. It can't just be content for the sake of content. And I'll give you all a great example of what that might look like. We're seeing quite often now people putting out too much COVID content. So they're just writing about COVID because COVID's in the news right now. And that's not necessarily the approach you want. If you have something meaningful to add to the COVID discussion, please add it. If you're just writing about COVID because it's a hot topic, it's a waste of your time and your readers are going to see right through that. Write about what matters and do it well. Put the time into it. Take 2 weeks instead of 1 week and get it right.
To build on both of those things, I would say the reason you're doing both those is to build relationships. So it's relationship building is now king. with engaging content that's solving a problem for those people.
Yeah.
That's very succinctly and beautifully put. So relationships are now king or
Yes.
queens or whatever you'd like it to be. All right. So last but not least, we've got 5 minutes left. So note for that for our speakers when answering. If you could leave everyone with one tip or trick that they could implement in their business starting tomorrow, what would that be?
I think mine would be listen more than you talk. And I think that applies to sales. I think that applies to social media. I think that applies to life. Just you will just go further if you're listening more than just putting stuff out there, because what you put out will be more relevant and useful to people.
I would say create plans, but be willing to be agile and change them quickly. So specifically with your website, start doing some A/B testing.
For me, is one of our favorite things to say internally: cook once, eat 5 times. So let's say you've done a podcast, in the vein of some of the things Karen and Kara have both talked about, turn that into an ebook, then break that up into 4 different blog posts that tease the content you find in the ebook, turn it into an infographic, and then pull some quotes from it and share that on social media. And now you've taken one really good piece of content and you've turned it into all of these smaller feature breakout components, and you've gotten a lot more value out of a singular investment.
That's great, Andrew and Karen and Sam. And so I want to thank all 3 of you for joining us on this, video today, on this webinar, live training, whatever you want to call it. I think your insights have been extremely valuable to not only myself. I've been furiously writing notes beside me. Well, I haven't. Otter.ai has, but I've been watching my notes compile on the side with little things that I've been flagging, which I think is absolutely valuable, especially to marketing teams right now who could feel really lost. Like it's, we're getting into Q3 planning for a lot of businesses, and the market has never been as unpredictable as it is right this minute. In the 12, 13 years I've been doing marketing, it's even more unpredictable than when the 2008 kind of crash happened, because it's so personal. And so I really appreciate the insights and what you guys have brought to the table today. And I hope that everyone on the call has gained something that they can take away. So I'm going to stop the recording. And then if there's any questions, we can just take a quick look on the chat.